One Piece is amazing. It's my favorite anime ever made, and with the Egghead Island arc wrapping up and season 2 of the live action coming out, I decided there's no better time to make a One Piece video. If you've been in the anime space for a while, you've definitely had a whole tri-state area's worth of people screaming at you that you must watch One Piece. But many have had a hard time getting into the story. Whether it be from its immense length, weird art style, or bad pacing, lots of people get turned off from watching One Piece. So I decided that for my channel's very first One Piece video that we would start at the very beginning of the One Piece journey. Trying to fucking watch it. I'm going to be making it this video's mission to help you feel better about the things that turn you off from watching One Piece, because I want every person on the planet to love this show as much as I do.
You will recommend Breaking Bad to everyone you know.
I will recommend Breaking Bad to everyone I know.
Now, I could sit here and explain the entire One Piece plot and all the characters and tell you how good it is, but I'm not gonna do that. You're a big boy now. You get it already. Instead, I want to go through some of the argumentative points of why people don't want to watch One Piece and try my best to argue against them. So let's begin with reason number 1, bad pacing. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that One Piece has amazing pacing, because that's just not true. But I feel that in this discourse, there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of the difference between slow pacing and bad pacing. Slow pacing means that the story is told more gradually, and rather than rapid succession of events, the story takes a lighter approach, with much of the runtime being spent on character interaction, world building, and overall depth, which creates a more immersive watch experience. A good example of this is Dragon Ball. The original series in Z were much slower in comparison to Z Kai and Super, but that doesn't make those series have bad pacing or be boring in any way. And I would say that early One Piece falls into this category. The pacing is still slower than most anime nowadays, but with its age, it's really not bad. With exception of Skypiea, pre-time skip One Piece has slow pacing, not bad pacing. Bad pacing, on the other hand, is a good way to describe post-time skip One Piece. At this point, we probably all know what filler is. It's non-canon episodes that are made for the sake of not catching up to the anime's source material so that the story can maintain a consistent pace. And One Piece doesn't have a lot of filler. And this is for better and for worse, because instead of having lots of non-canon bullshit, Toei just slows down the story more. And around the time you get to post-time skip, it starts getting pretty bad. A typical pre-time skip episode of One Piece is about 1 to 2 chapters an episode, which in my opinion works very well for One Piece. But around Dressrosa, it absolutely plummets to being as low as half a chapter an episode. And I will say, Toei has sort of fixed this recently. They started doing the Dr. Chopper recap episodes, and around the middle of Wano, the pacing starts to get pretty good again. Combined with the fact that the anime is seasonal now, so the pacing should only go up from here. And with this inconsistent pacing, there is only one solution.
Read!
Reading the original manga is probably the best and easiest route to go about consuming One Piece. Some people say to go watch One Piece, but I never really liked that. So I have a personal philosophy with consuming One Piece that I would recommend to anybody willing to try it. I think that when you watch, you should flip-flop from the anime to the manga a little bit. In my opinion, some of the arcs in One Piece are so unbelievably good in the anime, but other arcs get absolutely ruined and are much better in the manga. Skypiea is a really good example of this. The anime is widely considered to be an absolute snooze fest, but in the manga, it's so much shorter and not nearly as boring. And although I switched to the manga and post-time skip, recently I've been coming back to the anime and I've been really happy with that decision. And yeah, I know it's extremely hard to coordinate which episode of the anime coincides with the chapter of manga that you just read. I know this because I did this. So, since I'm nice, I made a little guide of where I think you should change from the anime to the manga and vice versa. Reason number 2, the art style is weird. If this is just one of the reasons you don't want to watch One Piece, that's totally fine. The art style is kind of weird. I personally never had a problem with it, and I like its obscure nature, so all I can tell you is that you'll most likely get used to it. And the art style looking like this does not take away from how stunning Oda's art is. His landscapes are almost unmatched by any mangaka, and Oda has proven time and time again that some things only look crude and silly in One Piece because he wants it to look that way. And last but not least, reason number 3. It's too long. I saved this one for last because it's like, yeah, and I don't really know how I can counter this argument other than just asking you to think about it in a different way. I want you to think of your favorite anime or TV show, maybe. Any series will do. And I want you to honestly answer this question. Don't you wish that that series was longer? And not in a way where it's super dragged out and should have ended years ago, but in a way that it's long because it needs to be long. Imagine that there is genuinely just so much story to be told that your favorite series is 3 times longer than it really is. You would eat that shit up. And I know that because you've rewatched Naruto 5 times.
Oh, you nasty ass bastard! You fucking nasty ass motherfucker! That's nasty, man!
And as a huge fan of anime, I also wish that some things I'm a fan of were longer. It's a very simple thing of just viewing it in a more positive way, because if you end up liking One Piece, you are going to wish more than anything that it was even longer. And with that, the only thing that you would need to know is if you'll like One Piece. And the only way you can do that is by watching One Piece. And I will prepare you, One Piece does not become peak fiction in chapter 1, and it takes a while to brew up because of its slow pacing. But most fans will agree that if you get to Arlong Park and there's genuinely nothing that you like about the show so far, then you probably won't like One Piece. As I stated in the intro, One Piece is my favorite anime. And that raises the question, why do I love One Piece? Of course, I love One Piece as a show. The comedy is great, the writing is amazing, the characters are the best that I've ever seen, and it has made me bawl my eyes out more than anything I've ever watched. But what I really love is how One Piece has changed the way that I think about the world and who I want to be as a person. The lessons in this show have taught me so much about the value of true friendship, why you should follow your dreams no matter the societal pressures that attempt to hold you back, the importance of standing up and fighting for those who are unable to fight for themselves, and that anyone can break the bounds of their own limits with sheer willpower. Also, you may laugh in the face of the force that means to kill you for simply existing. The theming and messages of One Piece have aided me throughout my entire journey of self-discovery, and is to this day motivating me to stand tall in this cruel world with a smile on my face. And I've just barely scratched the surface. There's so many things that this story has taught me that the only way I could say them all in this video is by simply saying that One Piece is the most accurate and deep reflection of the world that we live in. But that's about all I got. I could sit here and talk more about why One Piece is good and why you should watch it, but like I said, the only way that you'll know if you like it is if you watch it. And since the Egghead Island arc has just recently finished, I want to end this video off with a mini Egghead review. This is going to be a relatively spoiler-free review, and we really don't want to go in depth because we eventually want to review all of One Piece when the series is complete. So if you're not caught up, you're good to stay. Also, since it's just been a me video this whole time, the Egghead review will be done by Jamie. Oh yeah, this is a 2-person channel, by the way. I forgot to mention that this whole video.
I am also a huge fan of One Piece. It's my second favorite anime manga of all time, and the Egghead Island arc has quickly become one of me and Nathan's favorite arcs in One Piece, despite us just coming off arguably the best arc in the series' history. So let's start off with the most obvious thing to talk about, that being the animation. One Piece has always had very good animation, with the obvious standout being in Wano. But coming off of that arc, we were both a little worried that the animation would go back to looking the way it did did in post-time skip before Wano, which isn't bad, but is a significant downgrade to Wano's animation. But we were pleasantly surprised to find out that Egghead has the best animation out of any One Piece arc. They take every art style used in One Piece's 20-year run and weave all of those threads into one definitive art style that is so striking to look at and is just so visually appealing. Another standout in this arc is the characters. One Piece arcs almost universally add amazing and memorable characters that are almost instantly labeled as fan favorites and flesh out the One Piece world not only in their respective stories, but beyond that into the genius grand scheme of One Piece. And this arc is no different. So many characters, both new and old, get hype and fantastic moments throughout the entire arc, and as usual, Oda was able to squeeze more than a few tears out of both of us. With the way this arc was set up, it feels a lot more like a pre-time skip arc, and with all the new information and status quo shifts since the beginning of post-time skip, this feels so new and unique while also being a return to form for One Piece. We went so long without any answers to any of the questions that are left throughout the story, and Egghead just out of nowhere directly answers so much shit while leaving a lot still to be unknown. To us, this writing style feels very reminiscent of the impact of Dragon Ball's Saiyan arc. Let me explain. Sure, on the surface, these arcs are written very differently and honestly aren't similar at all, but we feel that it serves the same role in the story. The original Dragon Ball series had a large sense of wonder and mystery to it, and a lot of concepts at the time seemed unexplainable. And after all the time these questions lingered and probably disappeared from your mind, the Saiyan arc answers literally every single one of them. And it does this while introducing tons of new concepts, so now you have even more questions than you had to begin with. And when watching Egghead, it feels almost the exact same. This entire arc absolutely rocked our perception of what we thought to be the One Piece world. Just like when Goku's alien older brother landed on Earth. Combined with the fact that Oda has said Egghead is where the story really begins, and Toriyama originally was going to end Dragon Ball at Namek, these arcs just feel really similar to us. And going into the future of One Piece, it really feels just like Vegapunk's quote that the closer I get to the world government, the darker and more obscure it becomes. And that feeling of uncertainty of what the enemy even is makes us even more excited. And like we said, we are going to review all of One Piece in the future, so instead of a number score, we're gonna give it a thumbs up and a hell yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it. As you can probably tell, the last video got me into a big Dragon Ball mood, so now I'm rewatching Z-Kai, and I think that last video is pretty good, so go check that out if you're interested. I also try and stream about once a week on Twitch, but if you miss the streams, I upload them to NaterVODS. The links to both of these will be in the description. And just for fun, I want to include my top 3 manga as well as Jamie's.
In case you couldn't tell, I am a little congested during time of recording. I'm all nasally and shit.